Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today we have several questions, including questions of migration policy. But I would like today to begin with another question. A question that has an exclusively important, principled significance for the protection of our national interests, the sovereignty of Russia, for ensuring international security as a whole, without any exaggeration. I mean the situation in the sphere of strategic stability. It unfortunately continues to degrade, which is caused by the combined impact of a whole range of factors, moreover of a negative character, provoking a worsening of existing and the emergence of new risks of a strategic nature. As a result of the fairly destructive steps previously taken by the Western countries, the foundation of constructive relations and practical interaction between states possessing nuclear weapons was substantially undermined. The foundations for conducting dialogue in the corresponding bilateral and multilateral formats were shaken. Step by step, the system of Soviet American and Russian American agreements on control over rocket, nuclear, and strategic defensive weapons was practically completely dismantled. A system that worked both to stabilize the situation between the states possessing the two largest nuclear arsenals and, in general, to strengthen global security as a whole. I will repeat once again about the causes and possible consequences of such a state of affairs. We have spoken more than once. The multiple problems that have accumulated in the strategic sphere since the beginning of the 21st century we associate with the destructive actions of the West, their destabilizing doctrinal concepts and military technical programs aimed at undermining global parity, at attempting to achieve absolute overwhelming superiority. We have consistently and in detail dwelt on these issues, criticized this position, not only emphasized the extreme danger of the further degradation of the situation, but also repeatedly put forward concrete ideas for its joint correction. However, our warnings and initiatives have not received a clear response. I emphasize, and in this no one should have any doubt, Russia is capable of responding to any existing and newly emerging threats, responding not in words, but by means of applying military technical measures. An example of this is our decision to renounce the unilateral moratorium on the deployment of ground-based medium and shorter-range missiles. This was a forced step, dictated by the necessity of adequately responding to the programs of deployment in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region of similar weapons of American and other Western production, which directly threatened the security of Russia. Our plans for strengthening the country's defense capability are built taking into account the changing situation in the world, and they are being implemented in full and on time. We are confident in the reliability and effectiveness of our national deterrence forces, but at the same time we are not interested in further increasing tensions and spurring an arms race. Russia has always proceeded and proceeds from the preference and priority of political and diplomatic methods of maintaining international peace on the basis of the principles of equality, indivisibility of security, and mutual consideration of interests. I remind you that the last significant political and diplomatic achievement in the sphere of strategic stability was the conclusion in 2010 of the Russian-American Treaty on Strategic Offensive Arms. However, subsequently, due to the extremely hostile policy of the Biden administration, which violated the basic foundations on which this treaty was based, its full-scale implementation was suspended in 2023. Nevertheless, both sides declared their intention to voluntarily continue to observe the central quantitative limits under the Treaty on Strategic Offensive Arms until the end of its life cycle. Thus, for almost 15 years now, this agreement has continued to play a significant positive role in maintaining the balance of forces and certainty in the sphere of strategic offensive arms. The term of the New START Treaty expires on February 5, 2026, which means the imminent disappearance of the last international agreement on direct limitations of missile nuclear potentials. A complete rejection of the legacy of this agreement would, from many points of view, be an erroneous and short-sighted step, which in our opinion would also negatively affect the achievement of the goals of the treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. In order not to provoke a further race of strategic armaments, to ensure an acceptable level of predictability and restraint, we consider it justified to attempt to preserve, at the current rather turbulent stage, the status quo established thanks to New START. Therefore, Russia is ready, after February 5, 2026, to continue for 1 year to adhere to the central quantitative limits under the START Treaty. In the future, on the basis of analysis of the situation, we will make a definite decision regarding the subsequent preservation of the mentioned voluntary self-limitations. We believe that this measure will become viable only under the condition that the United States will act in a similar manner and will not undertake steps undermining or violating the existing balance of deterrence potentials. In this connection, I ask the relevant agencies to continue carefully monitoring the corresponding activity of the American side, primarily with regard to the strategic offensive arms arsenal. Particular attention must also be given to the plans of building up the strategic components of the U.S. missile defense system, including preparations for the deployment of interceptors in space. We will proceed from the fact that the practical implementation of such destabilizing actions is capable of nullifying the efforts of our side to maintain the status quo in the sphere of strategic offensive arms. We will react accordingly. I believe that the implementation of the Russian initiative could become a significant contribution to the creation of an atmosphere favorable for a substantive strategic dialogue with the United States of America. Naturally, with the formation of conditions for its full-scale resumption, and taking into account the entire range of efforts to normalize bilateral relations, to eliminate fundamental contradictions in the sphere of security. Let us move on to the current agenda. The floor goes to Sergei Viktorovich Lavrov and Andrei Removich Belousov.